The story begins at an airport, where we see a pilot named Brad hurriedly heading toward his plane, while talking to his daughter on a video call. His daughter mentions that she saw on the news that morning that the weather in the area he's flying to is extremely bad, causing several flights to be canceled. She urges him to cancel his flight and return home. Brad smiles and reassures her, saying he's safely flown in such weather many times before and promises to return home soon. This makes his daughter happy, and she ends the call. Brad then enters the cockpit and meets his co-pilot, who is nervous as it's his first time flying. An air hostess calls Brad outside, where a police officer informs him that due to an emergency, he must transport a dangerous criminal named Tony, a powerful and notorious murderer, to another country for life imprisonment. The officer explains that Brad is entrusted with this responsibility because he's a capable and sensible pilot. Brad agrees and seats Tony in the last row to avoid disturbing other passengers. Once all passengers are seated, Brad confirms with the crew that everyone is on board and the plane takes off. At cruising altitude, Brad puts the plane on autopilot and chats with the co-pilot about their families, showing him a photo of his daughter and saying she's the only family he has. Meanwhile, the passengers are enjoying the flight, unaware of the trouble ahead. Suddenly, the weather worsens and the plane experiences turbulence. Feeling uneasy, Brad announces that all passengers should fasten their seatbelts and tries to contact the control tower via radio, but the stormy weather disrupts communication. A lightning strike hits the plane, causing severe turbulence. Brad leaves the cockpit to check on the passengers and is relieved to find them safe, though the plane's lights start flickering. As more turbulence hits, Brad injures his head after colliding with the ceiling, but quickly returns to the cockpit to stabilize the plane with the co-pilot. With visibility poor and the plane at risk of crashing if hit by another lightning strike, Brad decides to lower the altitude. As the plane descends rapidly, passengers grow terrified. The police officer escorting Tony drops his phone and unbuckles his seatbelt to retrieve it, while an air hostess also unbuckles to help. Due to the plane's steep descent, both lose balance, hit the ceiling, and die instantly. The pilots manage to stabilize the plane at a lower altitude, but with limited power, landing at an airport is impossible. Spotting an island in the distance, Brad decides to attempt an emergency landing there. After a challenging descent, he successfully lands the plane on a road on the island, and fortunately, all passengers survive unharmed. A short circuit in the plane's system gives Brad hope, as some power remains. An air hostess informs him of the deaths of the police officer and the air hostess, leaving Brad devastated. Meanwhile, the airline owner notices the plane has disappeared from radar and, able to contact Brad due to the radio failure, hires a rescue expert named Scarsdell to locate the plane and its passengers. On the island, Brad gathers the passengers, explaining the emergency landing and assuring them that they'll use the remaining power to fix the plane and leave soon. He and the co-pilot check a map and realize they'd be on a dangerous private island controlled by lawless individuals who don't answer to any government. If caught, their lives could be at risk, and their government might not be able to help. Brad decides to take Tony, the criminal, with him to search for a radio in the jungle to contact a rescue team, freeing him from his handcuffs. He instructs the co-pilot to focus on repairing the plane's power system. As Brad and Tony venture into the jungle, Tony thanks Brad for trusting him. Meanwhile, a terrorist group on the island learns of the plane's emergency landing and plans to exploit the situation. Tony, revealing his military background, suddenly disappears, leaving Brad alone. Brad finds an old broken telephone in an abandoned factory and manages to fix it. He calls the airline's helpline to share his location, but a poor connection cuts the call short. He then calls his daughter, asking her to deliver a note with their location to the airline office. As Brad speaks, a man attacks him, but Brad overpowers and knocks him out. Sensing another presence, he hides, only to discover it's Tony, who has killed several thugs and taken their weapons. Tony gives Brad a gun for protection, and they discover a camera and passports in the factory. Revealing that the island's terrorists kidnap people, demand ransoms from their families, and kill them even after receiving payment. Realizing the passengers are in danger, Brad and Tony find a vehicle belonging to the man Brad defeated and head back to the plane. The passengers, waiting for Brad, hear a vehicle approaching and assume it's the rescue team. Instead, it's the terrorist group, who open fire to intimidate them. The group's leader demands the passenger list, which the terrified air hostess provides. When asked about Brad, the co-pilot explains he went into the jungle and hasn't returned. Brad and Tony arrive but stay hidden, observing the situation. A woman attempts to escape but is shot dead by the terrorists. Brad wants to intervene, but Tony stops him, warning that they're outnumbered. The terrorist leader loads the passengers onto a bus and takes them to their hideout, leaving 2 men to loot the plane. Brad and Tony capture these men, and Brad forces them at gunpoint to reveal the hideout's location. Meanwhile, Brad's daughter delivers the note to Scarsdale, who uses satellite data to confirm the plane's location on the dangerous island. He contacts a private military team who prepare to head to the island with weapons and money. Back at the plane, Brad discovers the co-pilot has restored power, boosting his hope. He leaves a message on his uniform for the incoming rescue team and heads with Tony to the terrorist hideout. There, the terrorists are filming the passengers to extort ransoms. The private military team arrives at the plane, finds the bodies of the 2 looters killed by Brad, and discovers his message directing them to the hideout. Brad and Tony stealthily eliminate several guards at the hideout. Tony brutally kills Moore with a hammer, and Brad secures a key to free the passengers from a locked room, instructs them to board the bus that brought them there. Tony warns that the only escape route is guarded by armed terrorists. Brad decides to distract the terrorists, allowing Tony to lead the passengers to safety. Despite Tony's objections, Brad insists it's the only way. He confronts the terrorist leader, claiming a rescue team is on its way and urging him to release the passengers. The terrorists mock and beat Brad, but the private military team arrives, engaging in a fierce gunfight. They rescue Brad and escape with the passengers on the bus. The terrorist leader, enraged by the death of his brother, vows revenge and prepares to pursue them. In the bus, the private military captain reveals they're a small team, not an official rescue unit, and the real rescue team will take time to arrive. Realizing the terrorists are closing in, decides they can't wait. At the plane, he announces that the restored power allows them to take off immediately. As the passengers board, the terrorists attack, but the private team fends them off with superior firepower. Brad thanks Tony for his help and prepares the plane for takeoff. Tony, running out of bullets, finds a bag of money, but prioritizes reloading to continue fighting. As the private team boards the plane, Tony chooses to flee with the money to avoid being recaptured by police. The terrorist leader prepares to fire a rocket launcher at the plane, but Tony shoots him dead, saving everyone. Brad successfully takes off, and the airline owner directs him to a nearby airport. However, the plane's engine catches fire, forcing another emergency landing. Brad skillfully lands on the runway, saving all passengers. Relieved, Brad checks on the passengers who are safe and applaud him. The rescue team arrives, and Brad sends the passengers with them. Sitting on the plane's steps, he calls his daughter, finding peace as the story concludes. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and like the video.